This is a TalkStation original podcast.
So we have joining us this afternoon North Carolina Representative Pricey Harrison, and I really appreciate her taking the time to be with us. And Pricey, good afternoon to you. By the way, is it warm there in Greensboro?
Yes, very.
Very, I bet it is. All right, so you represent Guilford County, and of course, Guilford County is contiguous to. I'm not sure which one of the 7 sounds of North Carolina is Guilford County connected to.
I have a great appreciation for North Carolina sounds and coastlines, so I'm always been affectionately inclined towards it.
I know, but you. What I'm saying is, you represent a Piedmont district where there is no connection to the sounds or the salt water, and
Right.
The reason I wanted to talk to you today, and I do appreciate you taking the time, is I'm curious about the motivation behind the Senate efforts. And of course, that was taking place in the Senate, not in the House. It's a different chamber. I understand that. But what I'm trying to understand is there were a lot of Piedmont senators, there were a lot of representatives from Piedmont, North Carolina, that chose to support this ban, and without any conversation, any explanation. And I'm wondering, and that's why I'm excited about having you join us this afternoon. And I know how you feel, and I know that you and Keith Kidwell were joking about the fact that the two of you are most often on opposite sides of an issue. However, this one time there was no question. You both were firmly on the same side of the issue in favor of supporting the shrimp trawling industry. But I'm wondering, what is the communications there? What is the, if you will, the understanding from the Piedmont representatives, Pricey?
Well, what I think happened is, first of all, the commercial fishermen don't, and Coastal Heritage does not have a lobbyist at the legislature.
Okay.
There occasionally Glenn Skinner and others are up there, but they shouldn't have to, because we should understand fundamentally how important this is to our history, to our heritage, and to our access to shrimp and other seafoods. So but the recreational guys have round the clock lobbyists, and they've been fighting these fights and making their case, and there's been no counter presentation. I understand the problems because I lived and breathed coastal and fishery policies for the years I lived in Beaufort, and continue to pay attention now that I'm back home in Greensboro representing Guilford County. So I don't think, and I don't want to, I'm a little bit confounded by the overwhelming vote of 41-4 and the fact that there was little opposition in my party to what seems so obvious to me, that we don't want to take away the management of our fishery policy from the agency that we should be caring about so much and we fund, and is the governor's agency. And that's the case I've always made, that we shouldn't be letting these kinds of allocation decisions be made politically by the folks who are writing campaign checks. And I think that's what happened here. And I am so grateful that the Republicans in the House rose to the occasion and killed it in their caucus. I think we had the votes. I was building votes amongst the Democrats in the House, but I think it's just a lack of understanding about how these issues should be dealt with, and presenting this as an environmental issue was very wrong on its face. And I countered that with information I sent out to my colleagues in the House, both Democrats and Republicans, because this was being presented as an environmental bill. In fact, the Democratic senator called it a big environmental win, and it was nothing could be further from the case. It was not an environmental win. I would have called it an environmental loss, but, a loss for everything else, too. So I hated that those guys had to come up from the coast and spend a day, lost wages, to fight for their livelihood. But it was a joyous experience to watch democracy at work, and the relief and the cheering and the happiness that emerged after the Republicans came out of caucus and said the bill was dead. It was a great feeling.
Well, I can't say enough how much you are appreciated. I know from our local community, and we're talking with North Carolina Representative Pricey Harrison. As she mentioned, she is representing Guilford County, and I know that the thought here is, okay, why the importance of talking to somebody from Guilford County? And the reason is, as I think she just articulated, and Pricey, thank you for doing that in such a concise fashion. It is the need to educate, to inform. And yes, I sympathize with the frustration that many have with lobbyists and consultants. However, it is an educational aspect as well. And one of the things that I have myself have learned, and I was surprised. Earlier this week, I was talking with a representative from the Southern Shrimp Alliance, Deborah Long. And there are 8 states that are part of this alliance, starting with Texas and coming all the way around, going up to Virginia. And she stated that North Carolina has the most stringent and restrictive requirements for shrimp trawling of all of the 8 states in the Southern Shrimp Alliance. And I gathered, really, quite frankly, from all the states where there is allowed shrimping, and I don't know that there is any shrimping to speak of once you get north of New Jersey, but be that as it is, I think the important story there was the lack of awareness that even I had living here in Carteret County about the significant efforts being made on behalf of the environment, the resource, to protect it by the commercial industry and all the agencies associated with it, particularly the Division of Marine Fisheries, National Marine Fisheries Services, that there is this, if you will, coordinated and cooperative effort to address these concerns, these environmental concerns. I thought that's one of those things that never even entered the conversation in the Senate debate, which was really sad, very sad. Your thoughts?
It's very frustrating, and I know that DQ is probably the least liked agency of all state government,
right.
And I feel like I've been in constant defense of Division of Marine Fisheries in particular and their efforts, because I participated in some of that back when the Fisheries Reform Act was passed, and we established a Water Quality and Habitat Committee, and you had these management plans and committees attached to each of those efforts. And I've been watching, and I know this fundamentally about fishermen who make a living off the water. They want sustainability. So they want to be able to catch in the future, and they want their kids to catch in the future. And just as farmers want their kids to be able to continue to farm the land, and whoever else makes a living off the water or the land. And so I fundamentally trust them to make the decisions that need to be made, because they don't want to, eliminate they don't want to eliminate the shrimp ability to continue to harvest shrimp by overfishing or overharvesting. And so I trust them, but not only do I trust them, we've got agencies in place with really great scientists. We got folks at UNC,
right,
and Duke, and NC State, and the marine sciences programs there who are involved, and they understand what's going on, and I trust them implicitly. I don't necessarily trust paid politicians, and we just need to make sure that voice gets heard by everyone up in Raleigh, and it shouldn't be who can pay the most to play, and that's I think that was manifested on the House side on Wednesday.
Well,
Tuesday and Wednesday.
I do appreciate your work on this. Pricey Harrison with us just for a few more minutes. Pricey, before we wrap things up, I had, before you joined us, as a matter of fact, just as you were joining us, I had cautioned the audience. The statements were made immediately following the House, the Republican caucus, that they were referring the bill to House Rules Committee, House Rules, I think it's called House Rules.
Yeah,
House
and
Rules,
operations.
Yeah. And theoretically, as they say in politics, where bills go to die. But I said that as long as that bill sits on the calendar, lurking in the background, it could, anytime between now and the end of the biennium, which is the end of next year, could be brought back onto the floor. Am I correct on that?
This is accurate, but I believe the fact that the House took a strong vote that was recorded as unanimous, I guess maybe there were a couple that were on the fence, but It was a unanimous vote to not bring it up. I believe that it would have to be something crazy that would make them, you would have a riot in their caucus, and you would probably have a riot in the building. You'd have the Democrats there too. I think the word was assurance that this bill would not be taken up by the North Carolina House. And so that is, I don't think they have any option of doing anything but putting it in rules. And, if something happened, I can't imagine what would happen, but that was a very strong vote in the House caucus, and they spent hours and hours arguing it. And I think now folks understand how misguided the vote in the Senate was. Pardon me for criticizing that chamber,
No.
It was overwhelming. I mean, how could this be? You should understand what you're doing to an entire fishery and coastal area, and then access to shrimp. I mean, all of it was bad. It was just a bad decision over there.
Well, I do appreciate the work that you did. I also want to thank you. Pricey and I have discussed, we've argued on a few occasions issues, but I do appreciate her concern, and I'm going to say this directly to you, Pricey. Your concern for the state of North Carolina, it's sincere. I think it's important. I think and what we learned this past week was, again, a vote that was beneficial, well, not only to the state of North Carolina, but arguably even to the country, because the access to fresh, local, wild-caught seafood, and we have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people pouring into our market right now, many, I hope, listening to the program, knowing that they have access to a fresh, local, wild-caught seafood that, frankly, in many regions of the country, and definitely many regions of the world, they don't have that benefit. We're very fortunate in that regard, and I think it's beneficial to the state. So your work in this regard, I just can't say enough. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. I'm just channeling you and all those good folks down in Carteret County. This was a really good day. It was a really good day when that bill died, and I just think it may have been a wake-up call for folks taking for granted the fact that this should have been so obvious that it was a bad decision. That would be a bad decision to ban shrimp trawling. So I hope that everybody's energized to fight the next fight. I don't think it's going to be anything like this, and we as colleagues, my Republican colleagues and I are talking about alternatives to maybe make this, put this kind of issue to rest and maybe revisit some agency. There was a lot of concern about the Wildlife Resources Commission sending out that list,
right?
Sending out letters. There's real concern about that.
Thank you.
And Adeline, yeah.
I raised the question in an editorial. Their boundaries are brackish water, inland.
Yeah.
What are they doing? Talking about shrimp? It's not even in their purview. I was stunned by that. So,
and not only is it not in their purview, it's borderline unethical for them to have been sending that out. State Resources advocating for a bill. So there was a lot that was wrong with that, and I know I heard from a lot of constituents who were concerned about that too. So
thank you.
That's something that needs to be cleaned up. But I appreciate you having me, and I appreciate your leadership on this issue.
Well, no,
You've always been a leader on this, so thank you.
Well, you're very kind. I'm not a leader. I'm just an outlet for them, and I appreciate that very much. Pricey, a pleasure. By the way, in advance, happy 4th of July to you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Have a great evening.
Always a pleasure.
Thanks.
That's Representative Pricey Harrison of Guilford County.